Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Grimm Chronicles. This is episode 36 for the last week of my reading in 2021. It's been yet again an interesting week. I'm all busy with teaching and getting used to the pace and dealing with my chronic pain issues, but we'll get there. And what else? Well, of course, the off-the-cuff Hobonichi unboxing is now by far my most viewed video with over 1,000 views, which is just the nature of the internet, I guess, and no worries there. And you know, I've been a stationary person my whole life, and so I did decide, what the heck, I'll do the Stationary Chronicles as a subcategory of the Grimm Chronicles. And it will be irregular, just whenever I feel like I need to speak about my stationary journey. This week I wanted to talk about, and I think I will even put this in the title, I finished one of the best books I've read in my entire life. And of course, I just finished it a few hours earlier today, and I'm still reeling. I really am still reeling from this read. And it was a fairly quick read for me, a couple of weeks, but still for me, I kind of went through it quite quickly. And it was an amazing read, and you know, one of the best reads of my life. Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. I'm just beginning my journey with this author, and I think I may have picked, some people I do think of it as his best work, and I'm trying to remember where it falls in his oeuvre. I don't know where it falls. I know there are a number of other books by him, and I definitely will check them out. And one thing these are going to be very off-the-cuff remarks, but there may be some spoilerish aspects to it. We'll see. I mean, I'm not going to censor myself too much in what I say. Well, I might a little bit. So the first thing to be said about the book is, I think part of why it's one of my favorite books of all times is the prose. I tend to be someone who just is a big fan of stylized, perfect prose, and this book has it in spades. Every sentence is perfection, or you know, nearly. I mean, it's just so wonderfully written, and that is, you know, it's not so a lot of people talk about how violent the book is, and it is gory, and there is blood and bones and scalps. So yeah, there is a lot of that, but and I do think that's a central part of the book. So I wouldn't say I love it despite that, or you know, in spite of it being violent. I do think the violence is in sort of an integral part of this corpus, this body that this book is. This book is a body, and I don't think you can sort of just take that away and still say it's wonderful. I think it's part of it. Anyway, I'm not sure if even that makes sense, but we'll go with it. And so for me, the prose is what sucked me in. I am glancing at my notes, I apologize. And so another thing is that I wrote here, so I had heard, you know, or just sort of seen snippets of people's opinions about it, so I wasn't too shocked by the shocking aspects of what goes on in the book, and specifically one character, the judge. Everyone talks about the judge. The judge is this he's almost sort of, I hesitate to say archetypal, because then we think of Jung, and I don't really like Jung that much, but he's sort of like this overarching symbol. He symbolizes so much. He's almost overdetermined in what he symbolizes, but and he is debauched, he is evil, he is he has sort of what we now call perhaps sociopathic tendencies, but all of that doesn't grasp his in a way. He is a wonderful creation of McCarthy, however awful he is. He's extremely interesting as a character, probably the most interesting character. The other, so it's not a book that sort of is about characters in that sense, so it's not typical in that sense. What is this book about? This book is about, I mean, in a certain sense, it is about humanity and the inhumanity of humanity. It is about the West and sort of the specific part of the Mexican-American borderlands, and California a little bit, the West. And it's a sort of, you know, people, is it a Western? not really, because it doesn't have the clear sort of things like revenge or fastest gun of the West type stuff. In a certain sense, a lot of what it's about, and it sort of sounds strange and perhaps even boring, is it's about the landscape. There's a lot of descriptions of the landscape, and actually there's also a lot of descriptions of how people inhabit these landscapes, and how also, and this is perhaps one of the sort of where the violence come in, there's lots of descriptions of how, so a little village has been devastated by whoever, and then other people come into the devastation and see the effects of the genocide, so to speak, and that's sort of moving, and it's also beautifully written oftentimes, but completely violent. You know, we have, you know, content warnings for people, dismembered bodies, specifically decapitated bodies, and you know. And in a way, we're already into one of the themes of the book is the body and sort of the cutting up of bodies and the scalping, and also sort of cutting off specific parts of bodies. And of course, that's torture and it's inhumane. But it's getting at the sort of complete disregard of any boundaries in a certain sense. So it's kind of interesting. It's called Blood Meridian. I was thinking of what is a meridian? What is a meridian? And meridian is a kind of geographical term, but it's also there's astronomical meridians, which another theme or sort of motif of the book are the heavens above, the firmament, the stars, and the interaction of them, these people, the silhouettes of these riders, this violent gang of riders riding their horses through the deserts, and the stars above them, and the stars kind of looking down at them, and them seeing the stars. And so you get this sort of kind of uber earth aspect is brought into the book. So my comments, as you can see, are going to be very general and sort of impressionistic, for lack of a better term. So, you know, and of course the fact that it has this sort of firmament stuff, the star stuff, I thought was fascinating. And I was kind of drawn into these descriptions of the desert landscape and also the seasons in the landscape. And just one of the things he does is he uses a lot of words that I wasn't familiar with. So you learn a lot of new vocab, and it's actually old vocab. So and that kind of did, I mean, that is, he just has a very large vocabulary. And that's one thing that when I reread it, I will look for these words and make lists of these words that he uses specifically to describe the landscape, this desert. And at some point they're in a kind of volcanic area, and this is connected to one of the, I hesitate to say miracles, but one of the weird things that this judge figure does is he is able to create gunpowder magically or semi-magically through the help of their bodily, their urine of these people, and the sulfur and the volcanic, the ash or whatever. He's an alchemist, which is, you know, I'm interested in alchemy in general. It's one of my interests, sort of very, very low level, very, very lay interest in alchemy. But so if you bring in the whole thing of alchemy, it kind of, so my reading of the judge, this impressionistic reading of this evil, debauched character who's very big and he's very unhairy, he's bald, he's always described as having a bald, round head. And he's often described as wearing either strange clothing. At some point at the end, he has this umbrella he's fashioned out of hides and bone that he carries around. And also, a lot of times he's naked. He's barely wearing any clothing. So very strange. And he's sort of described as prancing and smiling. He's dancing at the end. Dance is another motif of the book. But so he's a wizard. He's an alchemist. And to me, so one of the sort of areas I'm thinking of, and there's sort of hints that he knows other languages. He's scholarly. He has interest. He has a notebook. He's a botanist. He's sort of like noting down all this interesting information, so he's sort of trying to gather knowledge in. To me, he sort of represents, in that sense, he could be seen as representing the old world, Europe, so to speak, the old world, like knowledge and alchemy and wizardry and the occult in that sense, whereas all the other people, the kid is the other one, and then the people in the gang, the kid's illiterate, for one thing, and all of them are not big readers, let's put it that way. And perhaps we could, but then they're also the Americans, as opposed to the people that are other throughout the book that are almost often described as savages. So there is this sort of, a hierarchy in a certain sense, except that of course we see throughout the book this group of this gang being savages themselves. And so for them to describe the other people that they're often doing this violence towards as savages is of course ironic. Of course, the savages, in the book, in high quotes, this othering term, do commit acts of, horrific violence, even towards the end, and you can't help but sort of seeing it. And the judge expounds on war and the fact that to be human or to be man is to be at war, and in the sense of it's being payback in a certain sense. So that's one of the, that's another sort of strand that's in there. So yeah, it's an amazing read, and I will read it again. So in terms of the plot, it focuses in the beginning on this very young boy, the kid. I don't even know how old he is in the beginning, 13, 14. I mean, it describes his coming into the world in a certain sense. So he sort of thinks it will focus on him, and it does a little bit, but then he sort of disappears into the gang that he becomes a part of, and other people are described there, specifically the leader of the gang. His name is Ganton, I think. Ganton is the leader, and then of course we have this uber weird wizard, super. He's always sort of expounding and lecturing on things, and he has a special weird, creepy relationship to the kid. And that sort of is the main thrust of the narrative or plot. But then about the last, I don't know, perhaps 50 pages or so, it does change a little bit, because the kid is, again, the focus. And we see it's also in terms, so it's not that much time passes when they're doing their horrific deeds, this gang. I think the purpose of that, their job, so to speak, is that they're paid by governors of Mexican states to kill Native Americans, to the different groups that are in the area, and scalp them. So these are Americans scalping Indians, so to speak, and so, but at the end, then what happens is we get the kid who has survived a lot of stuff, and his life is condensed. So decades of his life are described in a few pages, and it's a very solitary, sad life, but it is a life. He's not dead, as opposed to many other people in the book, and it's almost as if is he doing penance? He's sort of wondering. He leads a very solitary life. He's not connected to people. Is it because he's so guilty about what he did? There's different readings of that, and of course the actual ending is when he meets up again with the judge. And there's lots of theories as to what happens there, and it's deliberately left unclear, and it's dark, and it's creepy, and its baby has to do with sexual stuff, perhaps. I don't know. To me, I did get creepy vibes from the judge. There's theories on that too. I mean, he's a very debauched. He has no morals. He's a Desadian. He's, and so the way he interacts with everything, with the creatures around him, people, he does seem to be drawn to the weakest of the weak, and he preys on them in creepy ways. So I would say that about the judge, and there's theories as to how the kid fits in here too, which I'm not going to get into because it's just still too new for me. But yeah, it's an absolutely amazing read, and I guess I think everyone should love it and read it, but I could sort of see how it's not for everyone, because it is so stylized and the violence is there. I mean, I'm pretty wimpy. Well, maybe I'm not. I am the Grimm reader, and as I get older, perhaps I am becoming less wimpy. For some reason, the violence because it seemed to be so much a part of what he was trying to do with the novel, it didn't seem in any way extraneous or unnecessary. It's completely necessary to what he's trying to do with this novel, which I still haven't quite figured out, but it's definitely it's a classic. I mean, it's up there with things like Moby Dick, and for me, why I say it's really one of my top reads ever is that I put it in the same echelon as something like Dr. Faustus, which is one of my favorite reads of all time. Thomas Mann, Dr. Faustus. And see, Thomas Mann is also a stylist. His writing, his prose is perfection in German. And I can read it in German. I'm so glad I can read it in German. And so, and also, you know, Dr. Faustus is also, the Faust myth sort of haunts these texts in a certain sense. And it's here too a little bit. I mean, to me, the judge is an amalgamation, if that's the right word. He's a mixture. He's both Faustian and Mephistophelian, devilish. He's the devil, but he's also Faustian. He's the seeker of knowledge, or he's trying to acquire knowledge in his notebooks, and his the way he sort of lectures is very Faustian. That's not Mephistopheles. The sort of creepy, smiley, whatever, taking joy in the destruction of things. That's the devil. But there's other aspects of him that are more humane than not. Although some people say that he's obviously a supernatural character, so perhaps he is. I don't know. The whole book is very, I don't know. It warrants definitely rereadings more than once. And yeah, so that's where we're at. And then other things that I've been reading in terms of my audiobook, my new audiobook, is also really one I'm truly, thoroughly enjoying. And I am a Knausgård fan. I mean, book 3, the one that focuses on his childhood on the island, is superb. And the reader, the audiobook narrator, is excellent. He's doing such a good job. I mean, only he could make me want to listen and laugh out loud about little Knausgård talking about his poop in extraordinary detail. But it's hilarious. I'm just laughing out loud. And then it's really well done. And poor little Knausgård, the sensitive, wonderful kid, you see his vanity, you see his incipient love of himself coming through. He knows he's vain. He knows he's smart. And he also kind of senses that his father is abusive. His father was abusive, was unable to be warm and loving and understanding. And I haven't quite figured out the mother out. She's very passive with the father, but maybe it was a sign of the times. Abusive dad situation, almost Kafkaesque, as an impetus for writing. Like, this is why Knausgård wrote My Struggle, is because of how mean his dad was to him. Because his dad is really weirdly toxically mean to him, I think. I mean, of course, we have to take into account that it's his view of things, but I believe him that this is how his dad made him feel, and this is what his dad did with him. It's one thing to be strict. It's one thing to sort of play games with your little boy in the way he does. That crosses a line, I think. And it's amazing. So I'm really glad I fell into that one. It was just, I thought, what the heck, I'm going to do it. I was looking around for a new book, and I love it. I love it. It's my favorite. It's the one, the first two were good too. I like the first two. I like his voice. I like what he's doing there. It's fine for me. And the whole that he calls it My Struggle, whatever, the whole Hitler thing, whatever. And then, so the other book that has, of course, been left lying to the side is The Door. And I guess I will pick it up. I will come back to it this week. I am getting busier, and I'm going to be even busier because I'm taking on another course asynchronously later on in the semester. So busy times ahead. Have to keep it all under control, but also fun times ahead. So that's good too. Oh gosh, 19 minutes of me blathering about one of the best books I have ever read. Anyway, I hope everyone is doing well, and I will talk to you next week. If not before, to talk about my stationery, but maybe not. We'll see. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.